Woomera detainee escape and who say they're determined to continue protecting him. The hooded supporters say the escape and rescue wasn't planned. Now, they were part of last weekend's protest, but say they were simply overcome with the emotion of the moment and couldn't turn their back on this man's desperate plea for help. They also claim their escape with their human cargo was remarkably easy, not encountering a single roadblock as they headed back to Adelaide. And whether or not they're telling the truth, it's an issue that has once again divided the Australian public. Paul Macon has this report.
We managed to drive safely home with what we thought was a pretty dodgy attempt at trying to rescue one of these refugees. But we wanted to do it because it was the only chance that this person had, and that chance is better than not doing anything at all. This is where we kept our friend.
If these hooded activists are to be believed, they are confessing to a crime of people smuggling.
It's quite cosy down here.
He said this was a lot more comfortable than what he was used to in Woomera.
On Saturday night, Friday night, we met a person who had escaped from Woomera, and they stayed in our tent with us until Saturday night and sat on the ground with a blanket over them as we drove out of Woomera.
They claim they helped at least one of the escapees from the Woomera Detention Centre make his run for freedom, using their car to smuggle their human cargo to Adelaide.
They sat in the back seat with just a blanket, and we actually encountered no roadblocks. We thought we'd encounter a roadblock at Port Augusta since we didn't encounter one at Pimba, yet there was none.
They say they were part of a protest which turned violent when demonstrators stormed the centre, while the detainees prized apart the bars, allowing around 50 asylum seekers to burst out.
What we have done, we did spontaneously and had no backup planning. We had no idea that we were going to do this as we went up to Woomera, and we got taken by the moment because faced with those situations, what would anybody do? Anyone with a heart would help them get out.
The tape you're watching was filmed by the two masked people themselves. After a series of anonymous phone calls in which we were invited to interview these self-confessed smugglers and the fugitive at a secret location, plans changed at the last minute, and this tape and note were left at the pre-arranged meeting point. We have no way of verifying the truth of what's being claimed, of how the escapee, possibly accompanied by two children, went to the protesters' tent looking for refuge, and how they transported him out of the area.
And we felt they were so desperate that they would do anything to get out of that place, and they were prepared to run. So we were prepared to help them because it sounded like them going back there was too much for our conscience to bear. They
said they'd rather die than go back to Woomera Detention Centre.
I mean, the material is designed to evoke a sympathetic response, but it's based upon a great deal of misinformation.
Needless to say, the authorities are not impressed with this so-called lawless approach. Least of all, the Minister, Philip Ruddock.
If people have legitimate claims which they want to pursue, particularly before the courts, as some of these people have been doing, they're not going to be able to do it when they're at large. They're not going to be in a position to instruct lawyers to appear on their behalf. They're not going to be able to turn up at a court.
John Howard said he's not going to change his decision. Philip Ruddock said they're not going to change policy. So if they're not going to change, then we're going to have to change. And we're going to have to change for them.
We hope freedom. We want freedom from this detention center. They are damaging the humanity.
And this is the man they claim is still on the run, an Afghan who says he's sick of being incarcerated.
But for a long time we are waiting for a visa.
How long have you been in detention centre?
Personally, I have been 1 year and 6 months in this camp.
If people don't meet the selection criteria, you have to be able to say no, and you have to be able to ensure that the rules are applied. Now, these people are essentially saying, we don't think there should be any rules.
According to the smugglers, their charge has now been spirited away, possibly interstate, although the Minister is sceptical.
I'm 100% sure that the video as a whole does not hang together in terms of the information that is known to me. There is nobody at large that fits the description of this detainee.
But please finish this government's prejudiced politics. It is not good for human. It's my story.
Well, it's just such a shocking shame to see so many people who've been arrested and spent time in prison, and they've now got additional problems to face, and there's probably been a loss of goodwill in the Australian public.
Jeremy Moore represents the Woomera Lawyers Group and says the violent protest and illegal escapes make his work harder.
We all believe that the appropriate way is to use the Australian legal system to deal with these issues, and taking the law into people's hands is not the way to go about it.
It's an issue that continues to divide opinion and create equal and opposite reactions.
Threat of violence, yeah, I'll smash your in, I'll stick it right up your if you cause any problems at all. Did you see that police department? From Bob Francis, police department.
Radio shock jock Bob Francis today launched a protest of his own, taking to the streets to confront Woomera demonstrators.
I can't understand how these premeditated bunch of morons who go up there knowing what they're going to do and then get away with what they've done.
What it says to the general community around Australia is these are bad people.
Like many radio commentators, Sydney's Steve Price doesn't agree with the breakout, but believes the federal government's handling of the matter has been off target.
We don't need to be seen around the world as a country that detains people in desert prison camps, which is what these are.
Meanwhile, the minister says there are definitely 12 escapees still running from the law, but it appears the masked activists, hoax or not, have no regrets.
Because we see no difference between what's happening now to refugees in Australia and to what was happening to Jews in Germany during the 1930s.
Certainly caused a stir.